A lot of people hear the word grammar and they just groan, right? They think of all these dusty old rules. But what if I told you grammar is actually a secret weapon, a tool for telling amazing stories? Well, today, we're going to dive in and see exactly how a few simple things called clauses can bring any story to life. All right, so I want you to imagine something with me. Picture us walking through this grand old castle, the kind with towering stone walls and portraits lining the gallery. We stop in front of this one. Look at this family. I mean, who are they? What's their story? What did they do? See, just looking at the painting doesn't tell us enough. To really unlock their secrets, we need the right language. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a little tour through time and use the language we choose to bring these otherwise silent faces to life. And the secret here, the real key, is something called a relative clause. I know it sounds a little technical, but stick with me. It's basically a simple piece of grammar that works like a spotlight. It helps us point to exactly who or what we're talking about, and, this is the best part, it lets us add all those juicy, interesting details that make a story unforgettable.
Okay, first things first. In a gallery packed with portraits like this, we've got to be able to identify who's who, right? We need to be specific.
So, let's meet our first character. This is Edmund. Now, look at that ship in the painting. There could be dozens of paintings of ships in this castle, but we're talking about a very specific one, the one which he commanded during a famous naval battle. See how that works? That little detail isn't just a fun fact, it's absolutely crucial. It's the piece of information that defines which ship we're talking about. And that, my friends, is our very first tool. It's called a defining relative clause. The name says it all, right? It defines something. It gives you the essential, can't live without it information. If you take it away, the whole meaning gets lost or confusing. And here's the big giveaway, the number one rule: no commas. You just stick it right onto the sentence.
This example right here just nails it. Imagine I just said, "The picture is the one I like best." You'd look at me and say, which picture? There are dozens. You'd have no idea what I was talking about. But when I add that clause, the picture that hangs next to Margaret's portrait, boom, instantly, you know which one. That clause is absolutely essential. It defines it.
Okay, so we've got the whole identification thing down. That's for essential info. But what if we just want to add a little something extra? A bit of interesting historical gossip. Let's check out this portrait of Margaret. Now, we're told she's Edmund's wife, so we already know who she is. The sentence then adds this little tidbit, who he married in 1605. Is that essential? Not really. It's a cool piece of info for sure. It adds some color. But if we took it out, we'd still know exactly who we were talking about, Margaret.
And this brings us to our second big tool, the non-defining relative clause. This one is all about the extra, non-essential bonus information. And what's the big flashing neon sign that tells you it's a non-defining clause? It's the commas, always. They act like little parentheses, just tucking in an extra, interesting detail for you. Okay, putting them side by side like this makes it super clear, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the defining clause. It's like pointing your finger. That ship, no commas. On the right, you've got the non-defining clause, which is like leaning in and whispering, oh, and by the way, she got married in 1605. See the commas? One identifies, the other one adds color. Simple as that.
All right, we've got the two main types down. Now let's add a few more specialized tools to our storytelling toolkit so we can get even more detailed.
So, here we have William, and we can identify him with a defining clause. He's the one who is reading a book. That points him out from the others. But what if we want to talk about his family, or the place he lived, or when something happened? For that, we need a few more specific words.
And that's where a word like whose comes in handy. Whose is all about possession and relationships. So we could say, William, whose wife Jane was a famous beauty, had 9 children. That little clause tells us about his wife. It's a really neat, efficient way to link people and their stories together.
Okay, so what about places? For that, we use where. It's pretty straightforward. We can talk about the castle itself. This is the family's home, where they've lived for over 400 years. See? That immediately grounds the story in a real, physical place.
And, well, if you've got where for places, it only makes sense you'd have when for times, right? When helps us pinpoint a specific moment. So, we're not just looking at a picture, we're looking at a picture from the year when the youngest was born. It puts a pin on the timeline for us.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground. We've gathered all our storytelling tools. So let's lay them all out in a quick, easy reference guide.
Okay, here's the whole toolkit in a nutshell. Defining clauses, that's your essential info. No commas. Non-defining clauses, that's your bonus gossip. And you gotta use commas. Then you have your specialists. Who's for people's stuff and relationships, where for places, and when for time. And maybe the most important rule of all is that last one. The clause always tells you more about the noun that came just before it. Keep that in mind and you're golden.
So there you have it. We just saw how a few simple grammar tools can take a silent, old painting and turn it into a story filled with naval battles, huge families, and hundreds of years of history. It really proves that grammar isn't just a bunch of boring rules, is it? It's about making your stories clearer, richer, and more powerful. So the only question left is, now that you have the tools, whose story will you tell?